Hi, Gary Stearman. Time for another Prophecy Watchers update. Today's guest in studio, author, lecturer, Bill Salus. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Gary. Good to see you.
While we got you here, I want to talk about some of the things you've written about that are happening right now, like the Psalm 83 war, and like Brexit, all of the things that are happening in Europe. And then in a minute, I want to talk to you about Turkey and the crazy guy that's running this awful state of Turkey. Let's talk about Brexit first.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is interesting. And, you know, when Brexit occurred, you had quite a few people thinking, well, see, here's a breakup of the potential revived Roman Empire. The European Union is going to unravel on some level or something like that. And the people who were mainly coming out on that were people who were thinking, see, now we're talking about a Muslim Antichrist, a shift toward Islam and that sort of thing.
Right.
I don't even see Britain in the revived Roman Empire. Now, they may ultimately get back in or whatever, but where I see Britain in Bible prophecy is in Ezekiel 38, verse 13. I see the merchants of Tarshish. There's more than likely, and I have a whole book, a chapter in the Now Prophecies dealing with this and the research I've done, pinpointing Britain as the merchants of Tarshish and America as their young lions, offshoots from them. So when I saw Britain exit out, to me it just showed how much closer Ezekiel 38 is really happening now. Now you've actually got one of the protesters in Ezekiel 38 with Sheba, Dedan, merchants of Tarshish and their young lions. Now you've got them out of the EU, and that's good. Now they're on their own, and the sun is setting on the British Empire. That's happened over the last 70, 80 years. And here they are protesting, not involved in the revived Roman Empire. I'm looking at that as that's actually probably a stage setter for Ezekiel 38, if that makes sense.
If you turn on any television channel that's talking about the news, what's it talking about? It's talking about the United Arab Emirates, it's talking about oil deals, it's talking about Britain, it's talking about the United States, the economy. All that is tied together in a volatile way that suggests that we're really, really close to something.
Yeah, and so, you just pretty much talked about, in that prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and 39, you have a very wealthy Israel, and you've got Russia's coming after that with its coalition, which includes Iran and Turkey, who are in the news. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But you have this group we just talked about, Sheba, Dedan, merchant Tarshish, and the young lions, who seem to be simply protesting. And, I think the thing that is really important, and because what we're seeing with the relationships that Russia's got with Iran, with their nuclear program, even Turkey and Russia are starting to buddy up a little bit lately. Turkey and Israel are starting to buddy up a little bit. You've got, rightfully so, a lot of people thinking Ezekiel 38 and 39 is about to happen. And I believe it is about to happen, but I don't think the stage is appropriately set for it to happen next. Right now, I think it happens next after these now prophecies. And my concern is the people that are trying to jump the calendar forward and say Ezekiel 38 could be the next prophecy that happens in the timeline, they need to think about a couple things. One is Israel's not dwelling securely in the midst of the land without walls, bars, nor gates, and they can't dwell securely because they've got Arab enemies around them and terrorist populations within those countries that happen to be listed in Psalm 83. So we have to think, could Psalm 83 happen and then set the stage for that? And to be quite honest with you, Ezekiel 38 may not likely be even a church age prophecy. It's, I say to my friends who are advocating Ezekiel 38 could be the next prophecy, I say, that prophecy, what if that happened after the rapture, right? You and I have had that conversation.
Sure.
If that happened after the rapture, it's not even a church age prophecy. If it's not a church age prophecy, yes, it's very significant, but why aren't we preparing people for the prophecies that actually could happen now in the church age? I mean, we may be raptured before anything happens, I understand. But there are certain things that could happen right now that have no preconditions. They can happen at the present time, and I don't think Ezekiel 38 and 39 is one of them. And the other thing I have a little difficulty with these guys that continue to talk, Ezekiel 38, and I think it's a very powerful and important prophecy. It's the prophecy the Lord's going to make his holy name known in, it says in Ezekiel 39:7. But the thing is, it's the most easily understood biblical prophecy probably in the whole Bible. God, I think, purposely made it that way. You don't even have to be a biblical scholar to read it and understand it. So we don't necessarily need to live in Ezekiel 38 and 39, especially if it's not even a church age prophecy. It could happen after the rapture. And I point out various reasons in the Now book why I believe it could happen after the rapture. So I'm sorry I kind of put a hit out on Ezekiel 38 and 39. It's coming, but I think we should be focusing on the things that could happen before it.
The now prophecies,
Right,
as
right.
you're calling them. Well, let's talk then about Erdogan of Turkey. Let's talk about ISIS. Let's talk about Russia moving into Crimea, moving in toward Ukraine. Russia is inexorably moving toward the south and the southwest. And by the way, in league with Iran, Iran is now building medium range and long range ballistic missiles.
Well, I mean, it's clear that Ezekiel 38 is racing at us like cloud cover. It's coming real quickly. And that means if that's got a few preconditions, like Israel dwelling securely without walls, bars, nor gates, the things that eliminate those conditions, the Psalm 83 Arab-Israeli war, the Jeremiah 49 prophecy with Elam, which probably a nuclear-related prophecy, probably as relevant as any prophecy right now, those things have to be extremely clear. I mean, it's kind of like if you see at the mall the Christmas decorations going up, you realize, hey, well, Thanksgiving must be about to happen. So if we see Ezekiel 38 drawing really near, and it is drawing near, I mean, I will not deny that. It's coming. Well, then what about the things that precede that set the stage for that have to be fulfilled? Well, they're probably right upon us right now.
And you're looking at a new way of interpreting Bible prophecy. Well, not necessarily new, but refined. Because as we get closer and closer, we've got to modify our traditional look at the timeline of events in the world and in the Middle East. And you're doing that, and we'll soon have a book out. And by the way, we'll be among the very first to carry that book when Bill puts it out, which I think is going to clarify a lot of the questions that exist right now.
Yeah, it's one thing to understand Bible prophecies. Another very important thing is to put them in their right chronological order.
Yes.
So that it's not a clumsy fit.
In fact, some people have said that's impossible. God has written prophecy in such a way that you cannot pin things down to a date. You'll never really see the fine points. But you and I have talked about some things, and we're beginning to think we're very, very close to an event that we're all hoping for.
Yeah, the rapture.
Yeah.
The rapture happens, and we're pre-trib raptures. We believe it's imminent. It could happen at any given time.
Sure.
And then ultimately there is a tribulation period that follows for 7 years. And most of your viewers, of course, you're aware of that. But what we're trying to delineate from is the old traditional teaching that once the rapture happens, there's only 7 years left on the timeline. Folks, it's not the rapture that triggers the tribulation. It's the confirmation of the false covenant, Daniel 9, verse 27. So that means that there is a period of time that exists. I call it a post-rapture, pre-trib gap period, that it happens after the rapture but before the tribulation. What's in there? How long is that? That type of thing. And so when you talk about laying out these things chronologically, if we haven't thought about that gap, we're going to get things out of sort if there's anything that's supposed to fit in that gap. And that's the task I've undertaken with the upcoming book.
We've got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about Elam. Now, until you came along a few years ago, Elam was kind of in a dusty, dark corner of Bible prophecy. And you brought that word out and kind of laid it out in front of us. Elam being vitally connected with today's Iran.
Elam is in modern-day Iran. When you look at a map of today's Iran, Persia is about 4/5 of the country, and to the west that hugs the Persian Gulf is Elam, separated by the Zagros mountain range. And they've always been distinctly different regions, but they are part of Iran today. And Jeremiah wrote about Elam, and his contemporary Ezekiel wrote about Persia. Persia's in Ezekiel 38 we were talking about, but Elam is not in Ezekiel 38. I think it's intentionally omitted because it's in its own prophecy that Jeremiah talks about. He wrote the prophecy about a decade before Ezekiel even wrote Ezekiel 38, and it appears to be dealing with Iran's nuclear program. And so that book, Nuclear Showdown in Iran, spells that out and talks about why that prophecy hasn't found its historical fulfillment and could very well be the very next prophecy on the prophetic timeline.
Speaking of the prophetic timeline, world powers are shifting. We talked about Brexit. In America, there is a very, very crucial election, and I'm not going to get into politics here, but it's I think a highly clouded event. Our next election is different than previous presidential elections, and it forebodes what I would think of as instability in the near future. And instability is exactly what brings to pass Bible prophecy. So
Yeah.
even in this country, we're getting very, very close to something.
Well, absolutely. And, in the Now Prophecies book, I have 3 chapters devoted toward America. And my concern is the decline of America. And why are we sitting on the sidelines, this powerful supernation in Ezekiel 38:13, if we're those young lions?
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing something to protect Israel with our commercial interests with Israel? Because there's merchants involved in that prophecy. And I'm concerned, dear viewers, that our country is on a steep decline, and we've said goodbye to God over the last 50 years by all the things we've done to straight arm him out of our society, with prayers out of the schools in the 60s and Bible reading out of the schools and abortions in 1973, and can't defend the Defense of Marriage Act in 2013, and now we've got approvals of homosexuality, same-sex marriages in 2015, Supreme Court decisions. This is a time for Americans to be very concerned about their future.
If you're a believer, go to your knees in prayer. Pray for God's mercy upon our blessed land. And I'm serious about that, and I know you believe that as well. Bill, come see us again soon.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate the invitation.
All right. Always good to have Bill Salus here with us. May the Lord bless you and yours, and keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.